So thank you again for everyone for taking the time to join us this morning. This is the December quarterly meeting of the Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce Collaborative. I'm April Harrington, the project manager of CHWC. CHWC, I think most of you have been around before, but our mission is essentially to unite employers and industry partners to support an inclusive healthcare workforce, provide accessibility for unemployed and underemployed populations, and develop innovative responses to the evolving needs of the healthcare industry. And we do that through three strategic pillars, which includes local and targeted hiring, building partnerships with our education and training partners, and working on retention and career pathways. We are a employer-led sector partnership. So we have 12 employer partners who are part of the collaborative. 5 of those currently sit on the steering committee, and we are supported by more than 15 strategic partners, including training providers and community organizations and workforce organizations. So today, first, we're going to hear some updates from CHWC programming. So we'll hear about some work that's happening with our Youth Pathways Committee, an exciting event that's happening next week. Then I'll give you an update on our career pathway mapping project. And we also have an exciting event in February I want to tell you about. Then we'll hear from a couple partnership opportunities. We have Cara Plus back again to talk about their next inclusive hiring lab. And we'll also hear a little bit from University of Chicago Medicine, who has participated in the previous cohort. So you can hear how that partnership has worked for one of our employer partners. And then we'll also hear from a new program from Microsoft called Accelerate, which is a program to help upskill job seekers and incumbent employees. And then we'll spend the bulk of the second half of the meeting talking about our 2022 strategic plan. So I have drafted a brief strategic plan for this group for the next year. That's come out of a recent steering committee retreat. So we'll present that. And we'll also spend some time in breakout rooms discussing one of those priorities, which is strengthening our community recruitment programs and partnerships. And during that discussion, we'll actually break out into employers and strategic partners separately. So I think it'll be a nice opportunity for employers to talk together, and then also strategic partners to talk together about what they need from employers. So I hope you'll stick around for that bulk of the meeting. And I do have a poll, just a very brief, I think 6-question poll about meetings and convenings next year. One of the questions is around, shall we remain virtual or shall we go in person? So I think I'm actually going to drop that in the chat soon, so that at some point in the meeting, I know you all capable of multitasking, so you could fill that out or fill it out at the end. And then finally, there will be a few minutes at the end for community announcements. So if you have anything you'd like to share, feel free to speak up then. So now I'm going to hand it over to Angel Alcazar, who is on our steering committee and also a member of our Youth Pathways Committee, to give us an update on that work.
Hi, thank you, April. Good morning. Can you hear me? Awesome. Well, yeah, my name is Angel Alcazar. I'm with Larry Children's Hospital, and I'm part of the Youth Pathways Committee. And I just wanted to give the greater group an update about our upcoming event. It's a college healthcare opportunity showcase and networking event next week on December 16th. Some of the activities that we have planned is an elevator pitch lesson. We're also going to have an exhibitor center where college students can learn all about our internship, training, and volunteer opportunities for each hospital system. We're also going to have one-on-one networking opportunities and roundtables. And then lastly, we're going to have different panel discussions on non-traditional pathways, diverse leadership, and overcoming obstacles and career successes. So those are the 3 topics that we have in mind. Logistically, we are looking for one more panelist specifically for the overcoming adversity topic. I also wanted to say that we are still enrolling, or we're still have an open registration. So far, we have 230 students that have registered, but we would love, as much as we can, as many students as we can to attend. And then we're also hoping to do something similar for high school students next year. Um, so we, yeah, so we're more to come on that. And then another thing that we're working on that's related to this is a live and interactive directory of all of our youth programs, where students can find different opportunities. And then please reach out to April if you're interested in joining this committee. And I think that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Angel. Yes, we're very excited for this event, and you'll hear about how it goes at our next meeting. So I just said in the chat, but if anyone would like the flyer or the marketing materials to help get this in front of students, just let me know. I think the materials were in our last newsletter, but I'm happy to just email those to you separately. Moving on. So most of you know about our career pathway mapping project. This is a multifaceted project that seeks to understand and strengthen pathways from entry-level clinical roles up into middle and advanced skilled positions. So we're taking a research approach by investigating what's happening on the ground. We'll look at data, we'll also survey existing employees in those entry-level clinical roles to find out what their career aspirations are, what their barriers to moving up the ladder might be. And we'll also be looking at models that are working really well. So we'll compile findings and recommendations across the industry on those pathways, but we also want to use this research and these conversations to compile some job seeker and employer facing tools that allow them to understand their career pathway options. So one of those tools will be integrated with the careerpathways.net website and their pathway builder tool that you may remember was promoted at a different meeting this year. But we'll also create some other materials that are most usable for employers, as well as our public partners such as CPS and city colleges and anyone working with students who are trying to figure out their career path. So we so far have 3 employers on board to participate: Advocate Aurora, University of Chicago Medicine, and Rush. So I'm very excited about that. Ideally, I think we could use a couple more employers to just make this the most broad, comprehensive dive into what is happening across the healthcare sector in Chicago. So if there are any other hospitals on the call today who have been talking about participating, now's the time to hop on board. So let me know if you'd like to schedule a conversation about that. And I have been reaching out to many of you individually and will continue to. We also have an RFP out for consultants to lead this project. And so far we have proposals from 6 many highly qualified consultants and consulting groups. So we're going to be reviewing those shortly. And the next steps are essentially to hire that consultant, hopefully secure 1 or 2 more employer participants, and then we'll convene a committee of the representatives of those employer hospitals and also the new consultant in early 2022. And at that stage, we will refine the scope to make sure that it is manageable for all the participating hospitals. We'll identify the specific occupations that we want to look at, and we'll launch our research phase. So let me know if you have any questions about that project, and especially if you're a hospital employer, if you'd like to participate, I would love to have that conversation with you. And then save the date for February 10th. We are doing an in-person relaunch celebration. Hopefully that will remain an in-person celebration, I'm hoping. I will send out an invitation and a brief registration link soon, but I want to get this on everyone's calendar. I think we've spent the last year sort of regrouping and coming together and figuring out what we should be doing at CHWC. And we're now at the stage where we have this mapping project and we're doing these big youth events. And I think we're finally, really gaining some steam. And so I want to celebrate and talk about our success with all of our stakeholders. So put that on your calendars and expect an invitation soon. And that is, of course, open to all of our employer partners as well as our strategic partners. Oh, and I'm going to stop sharing now, and we're going to get to that later. I'm now going to pass it over to Leanna Braun from Cara to talk a little bit more about their inclusive hiring. Now I'm forgetting what it's called, about Cara Plus and your inclusive hiring thing. Take it away, Leanna.
Thank you, April. And to be fair, it has gone by different names, so you are not alone. I often mix up our own inclusive offerings, but it is great to be back here with you all this morning. Thank you for having me. Again, I'm Leanna Braun, Director of Expansion Strategy at Cara Collective. And bear with me a moment as I share my screen with all of you. Can you see my screen, folks? Okay, I got a thumbs up. Wonderful. And luckily, you will only have to hear from me for just a few minutes. That's the good news. And really, I hope to spend this time to share our latest offering for companies to not only learn, but to launch more inclusive employment practices. And then, as April kind of previewed for you all, I'll be passing the mic to one of your own peers in this collaborative to share their own experience with one of our recent past cohorts. Okay, so a lot of friendly faces and names in this room, so I won't spend a lot of time here, but in case you don't know us, Cara Collective is a workforce development organization based in Chicago. We've been around the past 30 years, and in that time have helped move we've helped move job seekers with various employment barriers into over 12,000 positions at a 70% same firm one-year retention rate. And as you'll see, we've also been very, very lucky to work with a number of employment partners across a number of industries, but also including some folks in this room and many employers in the healthcare space. And as I just shared, most people know us for our work with companies making those direct job placements and helping job seekers connect to real openings and opportunities with our employer partners. But something we were noticing in especially the past year is so many companies were telling us they were interested in tapping into new talent pools, but couldn't quite figure out how to engage them. So through the expansion arm of Cara Collective, which to throw another name at you, we're Cara Plus, we realized that we actually could take all of these insights we've had from moving job seekers with these employment barriers, with these non-traditional backgrounds into gainful employment. And so we realized we could use that to actually help companies that were trying to figure out how to better attract, hire, retain, and advance diverse and untapped talent. And again, I won't spend too much time here, although I will share this with you. What we've been able to surface from our work is that there's essentially 5 levers that we've identified that really drive inclusive employment, which start with sourcing and hiring, but also importantly, look at job quality and support for employees once they're in the job. And then, as we heard just moments ago, when April was talking about the important career pathways work, that's another opportunity for companies to benefit from talent, but also for individuals to realize their full potential. And then lastly, that public positioning point, which sounds kind of vague and interesting, we really mean there that as we can see in groups like this, that companies can really influence one another when they share out the changes they've been able to make and be successful in implementing. And so now the Inclusion Action Lab. This is the latest iteration of our cohort model. It is our 6th cohort, and we've essentially taken all of those 5 levers of inclusive employment and turn them into this 5-month cohort experience to help business leaders figure out how they can better hire and retain talent and solve real problems like expanding their talent pipelines, hiring more inclusively, reducing that turnover, and then importantly, promoting talent mobility. And I'll just spend a moment here diving a little bit more into what this experience actually looks like before I hand it over to our friend over at UChicago Medicine. So what would a company go through in the Inclusion Action Lab? Well, we have this 3-act play, beginning with those very actionable job seeker informed strategies related to recruitment and retention. So again, those are all of the learnings we've distilled over our history at Cara Collective. And another really important part there is we know you all don't have enough time in the day. So it's not only about learning and hearing from us, but it's also about actively workshopping these strategies with your team. So we make sure to build in a lot of space around that too. The second act in this journey is actually designing a pilot. And this is a new experience that we are creating because, again, we recognize that it's one thing to learn a best practice, it's another to bring it to life in your team. So again, we want to help companies prepare themselves as they're thinking about what are those 1 or 2 practices that are really going to help them drive to the outcomes that matter most for them. And then finally, we extend an opportunity for our cohort alumni to be part of a larger network as they deploy their pilots so that they can continue to learn from one another, get support, and importantly, have accountability as they're making these really ambitious changes in their organizations. And again, I think this group is a testament to the power of just bringing companies together to learn and to share resources. And then finally, this is where I'll land. What you will actually learn. I've been talking very vaguely about these best practices for recruitment and retention, and what does that actually mean? So we started here, and this is we started with sourcing and hiring, and you'll actually hear Audrey talk about her experience going through our sourcing and hiring cohort. And what that looks like for us is essentially 3 different topics: creating the right opportunity, reaching the right people, and using the right criteria. So kind of on a high level, starting with what is the actual kind of job opening itself look like? What are the requirements that are involved? And how are you communicating the opportunity in a way that is actually accessible to job seekers, especially those that maybe you haven't been used to tapping into or attracting in the past? Secondly, when you think about reaching the right people, it is broadening your talent pipelines and finding new partners to help source that talent, as well as something we've seen a lot from our own job seekers at Cara is just understanding what are those unique barriers that often show up in the application process that, as determined, as motivated, as excited as they are about a position, just really doesn't help them to actually be able to apply for a job. And then finally, looking at the criteria that your company is using to assess for talent and thinking about how things like bias, but also moving from kind of work experience to transferable skills, how those things can impact hiring outcomes. And then briefly, we developed the second part of our programming around retention advancement, because we know it's one thing to bring people in the door, it's another thing to help them stay. So we've already heard about the importance of things like career pathways and of that long-term success for employees. But we also really like to think about setting up employees for success in the early days. So things like the job quality itself, but also the onboarding process, and also critically looking at how managers are another really important lever in helping employees be able to be successful on the job and want to stay. So I'll end there and just give you a quick preview of some of the companies that have already gone through our previous cohorts. You will see notably UChicago Medicine has been among them. And I suspect at this point you've had enough from me, so I'd actually love to turn it over to Audrey Gant, who is part of our most recent cohort. Audrey is a senior consultant on leadership recruitment strategy at UCM. So thank you, Audrey. I appreciate you joining us to share your experience.
Thank you, Liana. Good morning, everyone. As Liana said, I'm Audrey. I'm with UChicago Medicine. I know several of the organizations in the room were also part of this cohort. My colleagues and I participated in, as Liana said, this last cohort of the lab. And just to share our experience, we found it incredibly well run and actually refreshingly helpful when thinking about the recruiting process from an organizational perspective. The sessions that Liana and her team put together are really engaging. They're interactive. I'm actually going to reiterate a lot of things that Liana previewed, but I know personally, I really appreciated the opportunity and the time that Cara held to engage with people from different companies and hear about the things that they were doing that are working well, but then also kind of develop a sense of community, knowing that we all have work that we could be doing to improve our hiring practices. The moderators did an excellent job of structuring those sessions, again, to be very informative and job seeker informed, but also hold space for reflection and learning from each other. So sorry if you can hear the fire truck going by my window. But they would bring in voices from their programs and also just from the wider community to share lived experiences. They would offer the floor for myself and other participants to share our thoughts and our experiences. And then also, of course, curating those sessions to have really important and actually useful and applicable tips and tricks and information. For me, what I found the most helpful was the piece Liana mentioned about holding dedicated time so that our teams had a chance to discuss and really set down a plan for how we could put these learnings into practice. The Cara team challenged each of us as organizations to create very tangible sort of SMART goal type plans for how we're going to be implementing those few things we learn in class that we identified would really have an impact on our own practices. I also really valued the outside of class interaction that we had with the Cara team. They facilitated pre-program sessions. There were check-ins, sort of like email check-ins and a little bit of homework that we did before each class. And then follow up after the sessions, after the lab is over. They're facilitating now sort of follow-up team sessions to really hold us accountable. The Cara team does an amazing job making sure that you feel supported, but also challenging us to do better because they're giving us the resources, including that resource of time to actually do better. So I'll spend a little bit of time just sharing some of the learnings that stuck with me. And actually, one of the things that Cara opened with, the cohort started with an overview of the slide that you saw that Liana shared just a little bit ago with those 5 levers of inclusive employment. And that obviously informed the whole lab, but it was really, I'll say, informative and helpful just to have that touch point to always go back to and see how that was informing the work and the information that they were sharing. So just to reiterate those, the first one was sourcing, and they really spent time focusing on how do you access overlooked talent. There was also hiring and then reducing bias in the process. The third one is job quality and support. Again, really related to retention. How do you, once you found your employees, how do you retain them? Which obviously right now is very pertinent for us at least, and I think for a lot of the rest of us in the room. Also advancement within the organization. And then lastly, that public positioning. So that's, obviously what employers commit to publicly. So specifically from those levers, a few of the learnings that have really stuck with me were the great ideas around reducing bias in the hiring process. Especially for me, I took away implementing a blind audition process, which they outlined in the sessions, focusing on work samples instead of resumes and letters. I was also very struck by, in a different session, the suggestion of an open hiring initiative, which, as a side note, all of the techniques that the Cara team highlighted to us or presented to us were backed up by research, which they would share with us in advance to allow us to get acclimated to the ideas beforehand, but also which were obviously, Cara is hearing those from their job seekers as well. So it's a really well done combination of research, lived experience, and proven outcomes. Anyways, the open hiring initiative piece is where new hires are offered a position when their name comes up next on the list of people who have expressed interest in working. So there's no resume, no interview, no background check. It's just a job when their name comes up next on the list. And so that was a really interesting concept that I had never heard of before, but it's proven to work. So it's great to just have these new ideas and be considering how you can expand your hiring practices to be more inclusive. And the last piece I'll share, which I'll come back to in a little bit, but for me, the impact that a company's public positioning can have, not just on customers, but also on recruiting top talent, was a very thought-provoking piece and one that we identified that we want to really focus on. So to that point, as a result of the lab, University of Chicago Medicine are undertaking a few different initiatives. First is we're working on a recruitment language refresh. So we're going through our job postings, we're reviewing our candidate communications, our offer letters, all the other touch points during recruitment to update the language that we use to be more reflective of our culture at UChicago Medicine and what we stand for and what we work towards, and how we engage with the community, the good things we're doing, but also candidly to be more open and transparent about us as an organization, what we stand for, what we work towards. Again, with the goal to be more transparent to prospective candidates and incoming employees, so they know what they're getting into, what we do, what we stand for. The other piece that we're working on is updating and extending our existing interviewer training. So currently that includes behavioral interviewing techniques, reducing unconscious bias training. But as a result of the Institute, we really became aware that we need to make sure hiring managers are putting those behavioral interviewing techniques into practice in interviews, and then also using that data to inform hiring decisions. So those were just two of the things that we are focused on as a result of the Institute. I know I speak for all of us from the University of Chicago Medicine Group when I say, it was a very useful, very beneficial institute, and we would all definitely recommend it to anyone that's looking to bring a fresh perspective to yourself or to the organization on your hiring practices.
Wow, thank you so much, Audrey, for sharing that experience. And I know we're at time, so again, thanks to all of you for this space. Thank you again, Audrey, for sharing your kind words about the experience. And I'll just put my contact in the chat if anyone wants to reach out to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Liana. And yes, thank you so much, Audrey, for joining us and for sharing your experience. It was really great to hear all the fantastic work that you're doing, and that Cara Plus has been such a beneficial tool and resource to you all. And I know that some of the other employers on this call have also been part of the Cara Plus cohort, but I also know that your systems are very large, and I know you've all experienced some turnover recently, so feel free to bring a new group together to join the next Cara Plus cohort as well, or the Inclusive Action Lab. So thanks, Liana. Thanks, Audrey. Before we move on, does anyone have questions for Liana or Audrey?
I do have a quick question. Audrey, have you involved or is the plan to involve many of the, say, unit directors and such in sort of the job description refresh, or hiring managers, if you would?
Yeah. So yes and no. Our immediate step, so as I mentioned, Liana and her team, the Cara team, have set up sort of post-session conversations, and they help us lay out a plan for immediate next steps and then forward in the future. Involving hiring managers is a little bit further down the line. Our immediate goal, something that we feel we can deliver on in the next 6 months, basically, is to create sort of system-wide language that we can use to immediately be more representative of the organization and the culture that people will be joining when they apply to be an employee at UChicago Medicine. Ultimately, yes, the intent is to involve the unit managers, involve the hiring managers. That's something that our recruiting team is focused on as well, just doing a kind of a overhaul, like a review of all of the job descriptions. And so that will be coming, but that's not the immediate goal. That's in our long-term plan.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you again, Liana and Audrey. Much appreciated. I'm going to pass the mic now to Grace Suh, who's going to tell us a little bit about Microsoft Accelerate. Grace, you should be able to share your screen.
Great. Thank you so much, April. Let me just, here it is. Okay. Are you guys seeing my screen? Okay, good. Thank you. And April, thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to the group today. It's good to see some old friends from past lives. I want to give a big shout out to Cara and Liana, who've been so helpful as we launched our work, our Accelerate work in Chicago. So I'm Grace Sue. I'm a director for hiring activation with Accelerate, which is a new initiative of Microsoft. And going to walk you through the program a little bit today and ultimately ask you to engage with us and become part of this initiative. Was wonderful to hear all about the work that Cara's doing. The Action Lab is amazing, so thoughtful, all of the work that's happening out of University of Chicago Medicine. And this is very much in line with that. Our focus is on IT talent, which I know for many of you on the phone is not top of mind because you're thinking about clinical talent. And of course, that makes sense in where we are today. But at the same time, every company needs IT talent, and in hospitals or IT industries just as much as Microsoft is in many ways. So we want to talk about talent through the IT lens and in terms of skills-based hiring. So Accelerate is a US-wide initiative. We're really focused on driving economic mobility for underserved communities. We are focused on helping businesses fill skills gaps that they're facing and think differently about who can lead and who can work and expand their talent pools. And we want to reinvigorate local economies, especially in the wake of COVID. This is a 6-city initiative that will expand to 9 cities. We're currently in Atlanta, Houston, Louisville, New York City, Miami-Dade, and Chicago, which just launched October 1st. And as you can see, it was a big event we had with Brad Smith, who is the president of Microsoft, and Mayor Lightfoot. A number of other dignitaries were involved in the announcement. And that's because this is really an ecosystem play. This is not about Microsoft coming in and trying to change the landscape. It's really about how are we going to integrate within Chicagoland to create an impact within the economy and within the way employers think about hiring. So we're here providing the content for free and supporting with wrap services. So we work with learning partners who are experts in the field to deliver learning to adults from non-traditional backgrounds. So they are adults who are primarily those who have a less than a 4-year degree, and we're working through our learning partners such as General Assembly, Springboard, and Perscolas to skill those individuals. So they engage in the learning for free. They receive wraparound services, which can be technology, it can be professional suiting. We do a lot of interview support, resume support, LinkedIn profile support, and we work to do that through community partners and also through Microsoft itself, delivering those kinds of opportunities. And the fourth piece is business. Microsoft is hiring through Accelerate, but we need other businesses to hire as well if we're going to make a significant impact within Chicago, but also a lasting and sustainable one. Our goal is this program is a 3-year program, and our goal is when we leave here, we want to really have helped to change the culture of hiring within Chicago, certainly working with Cara and others who are also pushing hard on skills-based hiring. So we've really focused a lot on integrating Accelerate as part of this larger skilling initiative that we have called Global Skills Initiative. And through that, we've had tens of thousands of people who've been skilled. And while skilling is great, hiring is our North Star. So we're really working now on building a seamless pathway from the skilling to jobs. And to date, we've had more than 760 adults put into meaningful IT jobs with big employers like Microsoft and Accenture, Coca-Cola, but we need to do a lot more with employers of all sizes. We know that programs like this, we need every single company hiring. So large companies, small companies, medium companies, there'll be some companies who can hire 5 or more people, but most will hire 1 or 2. So we're working to get the word out across the board to companies, whether they're IT companies, healthcare companies, companies who are manufacturing companies, because again, all companies are hiring for IT skills. So you heard a lot from Liana brilliantly about skills-based hiring, and we know the labor market is tight. And as we think about bringing this program into Chicago and all the other cities that we're in, we really do think about how do you change the culture of hiring? How do you get employers to expand their talent pools, look beyond where they traditionally look for great talent? And when we think about talent, we know that there is, especially in the IT industry, a real focus on degrees and also on who you know. And what we're trying to do through Accelerate is to get people to really think differently about what it is that they're looking for when they think about their next great hire. And if you ask anybody, they're not talking about somebody who necessarily graduated from a Ivy League school or a top tier school. They're looking for someone who has technical acumen, the professional skills like problem solving, creative thinking. They want more diversity within their companies. They know that diversity breeds innovation, and they want people with a growth mindset. So it seems like a simple transition, but we know it's not. And so grateful that there's things like Action Lab that can help companies think differently. Just a few statistics to demonstrate the power of skills-based hiring. And sorry, I'm moving all your faces over to a different side. And this comes from new research from Harvard. We know that hiring for skills is 5 times more predictive of job performance and 2.5, this one surprised me, 2.5 times more predictive than hiring for work experience. We'd like to turn that slide, but we think about supply and demand and asking everyone to think about supply and demand differently, because the regular rules of supply and demand don't work when you're talking about talent from underserved communities, because they're overlooked, and a lot of companies are simply not considering them to join their companies. So we're working on the supply side to make sure that we have hire ready graduates so that when they sit in front of recruiters, they are completely ready to garner that job. On the demand side, we're working with hiring partners to really understand what are their entry-level IT skill needs, and then to facilitate as much as we possibly can the matchmaking process to deliver the talent to them, and also talk about the importance of skills-based hiring. So we're doing that in a number of different kinds of ways. We have a technology called Career Connector that houses resumes of candidates from diverse backgrounds. And then we have recruiters within Career Connector who will help companies put in their job descriptions, and then we'll do some matchmaking. So we really want to make it as absolutely easy as possible. And we also hold events. We have virtual career fairs in addition to things like mock interviews, but those virtual career fairs serve as rallying opportunities to bring hiring partners and graduates together to meet one another, to share information, and really get that hiring going. These are some of the things that we're doing. We know that there's other kinds of career fairs within Chicago, and we want to really add and augment to the mix, and would encourage any of you to participate in those. This gives all of you just a peek into what we are skilling for. Again, this is all about IT learning. We know that our learners are coming in at different levels. Some will be coming in with no knowledge whatsoever, and our job is to make sure that they're gaining the digital fluency that they need, regardless of where they are. So really building fundamental skills, helping them build their muscles, get into intermediate and advanced skills in data analysis, software engineering, cloud, IT support. Our goal is to provide our learners with a robust skill set that's going to help them land that first job, and not a dead-end job, a job that leads to up a career ladder. Here's some of the examples of the skilling work that's happening in Chicago through Generation, General Assembly, and Springboard. We have other learning partners as well, but since we just launched on October 1st, we're still getting going with some of them. We are welcoming more learners into our learning cohorts. So if you have learners to direct, please let me know, and I can share information about how to get involved and be part of these different learning cohorts. We know that, there's a lot of, I don't want to say competition out there, because we do want there to be a lot of channels to hiring, but we also want it to be channels to skills-based hiring. So what we're trying to do is support companies that will join Accelerate into our employer network. There's no hiring quotas to be part of our work. There's no financial commitments. What we really want to do is provide support so that as a company has openings, whether it's today or 6 months from now, they're thinking about Accelerate, participate in our Career Connector technology to help find the talent, participate in our virtual career fairs. We work with Skillful, which is an initiative of the Markle Foundation, to provide resources on skills-based hiring, but it's not at the depth of, as much as I love Skillful, it's not at the depth that Cara is providing through their action labs, and which sound incredibly thoughtful. I'm going to have to find a way to participate in those as well, because I think that those provide kind of more foundational, long-lasting impact than the e-curriculum that we're going to be providing through Skillful. And just because of the capacity that we have. Again, we want to work with companies to really understand their needs and your needs, and fill those needs by providing you with the talent that you're looking for. As Liana talked about, it's not just about getting the job, it's about staying in the job, it's persisting through the job and getting promoted. So we're doing a lot to create an alumni network with on-the-job supports and opportunities for people, once that they get in jobs, to feel supported and be successful. And finally, and this I think is a really important part, is recognition. We want to do a lot of storytelling, and we want to tell the stories of companies and community partners that are doing the great work. Because one, to recognize the great work, but two, we know that those stories are powerful and that they lead to other companies adopting thoughtful practices, and sort of through that company peer-to-peer pressure, as well as modeling, that we can really transform the way that hiring is done throughout Chicago. We're not just looking for full-time hires. We know that work begets work. So if there's opportunity for contract work, part-time work, apprenticeships, internships, we'd love to come have you involved, give you access to the Career Connector technology. We know that you have a lot of connections. You have business partners, you have customers. We'd love to meet them, because we're leaving no stone unturned when it comes to the hiring piece. If there are ways that we can help you reskill and upskill your employees, we have free curriculum to do so, and happy to share that. And finally, we need volunteers for mock interviews and their mentorship. We have Microsoft employees who are doing that, but even as a company as big as we are, we're not going to have enough employees, and also just enough diversity of thought to give a range of different kinds of work experience to our Accelerate participants. So I would love your participation in any of these 4 ways. Finally, my contact information, I'll also put in the chat. I'd love to hear from you, and see how we can work together. I know we're almost at the end of the year, but even if we set up time to talk in the new year, that would be a great and happy way to end the year and begin the next. So I look forward to hearing from you again, April. When I talked to you, you were so just welcoming and open, and I am really grateful for this opportunity today.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you for being here. I think it's a great program that I'm sure people have been interested in hearing about. Does anyone have questions for Grace?
I don't have questions, but Grace, I'll definitely be following up on connecting on possible employment, but training, all of that. So,
Rukia, I knew I could count on you. I know Rukia from her days at the Chicago Public Schools, where she was like an amazing leader there. So happy to see your face.
thank you. Good to see you too.
Anyone have questions? Oh, and Rhonda, you just messaged me, but before you hop off or switch, did you want to share just a couple words about what you're doing with CPS CTE? Or maybe I'll get you after the next. Sorry, everyone. I was going to ask Rhonda to share a couple words, but we'll do that after our next portion. But before we move on, any other questions for Grace?
Sorry, April, I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Hi, Rhonda. We can hear you.
Hi, how are you? Yeah, yes. Good morning, all. How are you?
All right. Good morning.
Oh, I'm going to try to. Okay, I've got phone, both things going. I will just quickly say, it's lovely to see so many familiar faces. Maybe some people don't know me. My name is Rhonda Bell. I'm with Chicago Public Schools. I am the Career and Technical Education manager for the Health Science Cluster. So just letting all of you know, we're very excited and appreciative of our partners who are getting back in in-person work-based learning with us. So Sinai, St. Mary and Elizabeth, and South Shore hospitals will be hosting students tomorrow morning, which is great. We have a second in-person session on February 9th. We have someone else I'm missing for that, but any of you would like to discuss that, let me know. We're doing some exciting things with UI Health right now. So we're just slowly trying to get back online. This whole first semester, a readjustment. Anyways, we've seen a lot of transition in CPS. We've had changes. We have a new CEO. We have students who are in high school who haven't been in school for 2 years. So many of our schools who are on our program in sophomore year, they haven't been in school since 8th grade. We are trying to reteach how to be in school, how to be social, how to get back in the swing of things. So if any of you are interested, please let me know in that in-person event, and we will simultaneously the following week be having a virtual event. So I'll drop my information in the chat. I know most people here, but I know that people, for a few, I don't know.
Thank you, Rhonda. Much appreciated. And feel free to send me anything to include in the newsletter as well.
Yes, I definitely will. We're gonna. Oh, that was the one thing. So South Shore and St. Mary and Elizabeth. And why am I spacing right? Let's see. Well, I see South Shore. I'm at St. Mary. Thinking on the third hospital. But certainly, if you have social media, we're going to tag you with some of those pictures of those students who will be.
Thank you, Rhonda. And thanks again to Grace. We're going to move along right now to share the strategic plan for the next year for CHWC, which we'll just briefly run through so that we can spend some time in a discussion. So I'm going to pass it off to Rukia Kirby-Johnson, who is on our steering committee, to walk us through the strategic plan.
All right, good morning, everyone. As April mentioned, we had a steering committee retreat a couple weeks ago, and sort of came out of that with this one-year vision and some core priorities, or rather priorities and some core projects. And these projects and priorities really have come out of all the work that we've done over the past year or so. And we want you to know that this is a working draft. We would love to get any input on what you see here. And also, we want to make sure that we will go into these breakout rooms and kind of focus on one of the core projects, because it's incredibly important that we get your feedback and input to help, refine and ensure that we are working along the right path and we're being as effective as possible as a group. And so just to start out, we did basically come up with this one-year vision where essentially we want to be the go-to organization for employers and community partners seeking to create a more inclusive healthcare workforce. We know that there are a lot of different groups around here who are doing some similar work, but we want to make sure that we are at least a go-to for most of us as we really think about how do we share, learn from each other, consider, promising practices, and build that workforce pipeline. And we also, let's just make sure we're clear. We want you to be actively engaged. So that is a good point to make sure as we think about this next year, we want to ensure that we have active engagement from all our employers and strategic partners. Next slide. And so priority number one is building more employer engagement. We want to engage more senior leaders in CHWC meetings. We really want to work with other collaboratives and system change organizations, thinking about the big picture goals and our approach to doing this work. We want to engage more public leaders at the city, state, and federal level for buy-in, incentives, and really thinking about a way that we can all be held accountable for sort of the growth, and development of the healthcare workforce across the region. And then very specifically, we want to engage more of the HR team, especially talent acquisition. I was really glad to see we have a few more of those folks on this call today, and hopefully be engaged going forward, because at the end of the day, you know, that's where the rubber meets the road, is in that talent acquisition group. And we want to see more engagement from healthcare employer HR teams. Next slide. Our second priority was to facilitate peer learning and foster more connections. So we're having these quarterly learning events. We want to make sure that we're, you know, focusing on hot topics, relevant topics that will allow us to, you know, meet our needs as organizations. And then also through our quarterly meetings and newsletters, connect employers to workforce partners and promoting the workforce model. So, you know, learning from Cara, thinking about other organizations, actually Grace, you know, sharing some of those other learning training partners. Those are, you know, those are some of the types of connections that we want to be able to foster and make sure that we're connecting employers to the range of training partners, as well as those workforce development partners to support our work. Next slide. And so the third priority was to leverage our collective voice. We recognize that there are a number of you know, legislative, you know, options and policies out there that we should be informing. We should be driving some of the policy there, and we want to make sure that we as a collective, as an employer-led collective or collaborative, can advocate for policies that widen equitable access to healthcare careers. So that is, you know, thinking about things like apprenticeship and what is funded, and what are, you know, sort of different other policies that we have across our healthcare system that might need to look a little bit different to provide a more diverse and inclusive workforce. And so core project number one that we wanted to focus on, and that will be the subject of the breakout, was building, you know, more awareness, promoting healthcare careers. That's, you know, largely what today is about. And we have, Angel talked about the career fair, in essence, that we're having for college students and plan to have for high school students. We want to make sure that we're continuing to build awareness. A lot of folks, they may not know about all the various jobs that are actually in our healthcare systems, and it's up to us to help build that awareness. And so in addition to, you know, an interactive directory of opportunities, leveraging some of the tools that are already out there, we want to really think about how we are strengthening you know, our community recruiting programs in addition to building that awareness. And so again, that will be the focus of the breakout. And so I hope you will all stay to help us really think about that. And then our last project, which April really talked about, was the career pathways mapping project already. And so we recognize that, you know, part of the retention is to make sure that we have strong career ladders and pathways, and people can clearly see, you know, how they can develop and grow in an organization, and just really think about that whole upward economic mobility piece. That'll be important for us to have. And so having all of the healthcare partners at the table, different types of healthcare providers, as well as, you know, core folks from HR, as well as from the units, will be helpful in us building out a really strong career pathway set for our members. So with that, April, I think we're off to our breakout rooms.
Yes, thank you so much, Rukia. I just want to highlight a couple of things in this draft strategic plan. Is one of the things we talked a lot about at the steering committee retreat was the fact that in the past, the Dick Durbin initiative HEAL was a great way to really unite everyone around these big goals and have buy-in from the top all the way down. So we talked about, you know, how could we recreate that sort of energy? And that's a conversation that I've brought to some other conveners and systems change organizations, is how can we rally the entire healthcare sector around some larger goals around workforce that can really, we can put our full weight behind and get all of our C-level suite down to our front level staff engaged with. So that's something I'm working on. And we know that we're already doing a lot on the youth career awareness front. We're hosting these events and we're doing this interactive directory, but we recognized as a steering committee that, one of the things that we really should be working on together as an employer-led collaborative is career awareness and is, recruiting from underemployed and unemployed populations. And we need to do that with adults as well. So that's what we want to talk about today, because we haven't launched any sort of programs that are geared towards adults yet, but we'd like to in the coming year. So for our discussion today, I wanted to break up into 2 rooms and have employers talk with employers and strategic partners talk with strategic partners around this idea of recruiting community candidates. And by community candidates, I mean, anyone from unemployed or underemployed populations in Chicagoland. So these are the questions we're going to be focusing on. Employers will be talking about, what do you need from training and community partners in order to recruit and hire more community candidates? And strategic partners will be talking about what you need from employers to train and place more community candidates into healthcare careers. And then we'll come back together and share a couple of those ideas. And this isn't meant to, create any sort of competition or finger pointing, but it's just to help us have a constructive conversation from different vantage points across this ecosystem. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms, and you'll get a prompt that asks you to join either employers or strategic partners. So just join the group that you fall into, and we'll have about 10 minutes in the room. Adrian's going to help facilitate the group for the strategic partners, and then we'll come back and share. So I'm going to open those rooms now, and employers, I'll be right there. I'm just going to make sure that everyone can get into rooms. So you should see, does everyone see something? Are people not seeing a prompt to go into a room?
I see it.
Okay, good.
Where's that prompt at? I'm sorry. Is that in the chat?
It should have popped up on your screen.
Okay, I'm gonna check again.
But I can just assign you, Leslie. I'll assign you to employers. There you go.
April, I don't see one either.
Okay, I got you. And, oh, Nicole, I assigned you. You still here? And Monica, do you see it? Okay. Let me join.
Sure, I'll kick it off. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dana Anthony. I am the community sourcing consultant here at Rush. Excuse me, was it anything else or just a quick name? Okay, I'm done. All right, next. Or do I call the person?
Yes.
I'll pick on Erin.
Hi, everybody. I am Erin with Northwestern Medicine. I'm in recruitment, so I oversee a few different areas: our campus recruitment, our paid summer internship, our apprenticeship programs, and then our MSP that oversees agency for the health system. I will pick on Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie Rogers, Assistant Administrative, South Shore Hospital. I'm operations and outreach and community and numerous other things. I don't do nursing. It's probably one of the things I don't do. And so I'm here because HR has not become part of it yet. I'm trying to get them there. And I will call her Maria.
Good morning. I'm Maria Rivera. I'm the Director of Workforce Development and Multicultural Education at Lurie Children's. And we'll call Audrey.
I'm Audrey. I am in talent strategy, leadership recruitment, so director level and above at University of Chicago Medicine. I will call on Selena.
Good morning, I'm Selena. I'm the program manager on the workforce development team with Maria at Lurie's. And then I'll call on Angel.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Anhid, and I am with Maria's team at Lurie Children's. I am the program specialist. And I will call on Donnie.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Odana Sandoval. You can call me Donnie. I'm the Workforce Development Coordinator for UI Health Volunteer Services under Kinga Mateja. And I can pass it on to Kinga.
Okay.
Yeah, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, hi everyone. So sorry. My name is Kinga Mate. I'm the Director of Volunteer Services and Workforce Development for UI Health. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining today, and thanks for kicking us off with introductions, Rukia. So I just put the question we're talking about in the chat, which is, what do you need as employers from community and training partners to recruit and hire more community candidates? Anyone feel free to start us off.
Okay, I know I have some a couple thoughts. I know one of the things that will need input is sort of just at a very basic level, some marketing and communication, meaning thinking about what are like social media, like what are groups and folks we can do direct reach out to, if there are even, I'm calling them influence, not just but influencers, if you will, in the community to be connected to. Because sometimes they're your standard groups, and then there's like one or two people sometimes who have really strong connections and can, touch a lot of different spaces and be able to spread the word. So just immediate things I was thinking about was sort of the social media component and outreach to influencers, and then also even thinking about language. I know Rush, I looked at a couple of the recruiting flyers and I was like, these are horrible. Like they're not community friendly facing materials. And I know that's something that, we have to work on. So that would be a good help.
I think the communication, as you were saying, is very important, and who's the person getting the communication out is really important. It kind of, I use the analogy of like the Charlie Brown effect. So after some community partners have been getting the information out, it turns into the mom, womp, mom, womp, mom, womp, mom, womp. And so they're not listening to what it is that's going on. And I went over to Technology Center of DuPage, and I had an in-person conversation with some of their students there, and they're doing really great. They have a great program. So they have high school students to come in, and they earn their CMA or their CNA certifications upon graduation, which is great for them to enter into these careers. But they've been listening to these teachers talk about how great these careers are, and it turns again into the Charlie Brown teacher. But when I was there, you saw like a different light in their eyes, because they're like, oh, so what our teacher was saying was correct. So having the correct, I don't want to say correct because it's not correct or incorrect, but just who it is that we're getting to convey these messages, because after so long, the community partners reaching out to their client base, they're really not listening as much as they probably should to the advice that's being given, which is turning into like a lack of the applications and the communication from the community partner to the employer.
So I feel like both what Rukia and Dana, what you both were saying was it's important for you as the employers to have direct access to candidates to talk to, as opposed to sending all your messages through these other channels. Am I hearing that correctly?
So yes and no, and I'll tell you my yes and I'll tell you my no. Yes, because of the things that I mentioned. The no, because if I have that direct contact and they are all communicating with me, I would probably pull out my hair strand by strand. And I've had some community partners email me and say, hey, Dana, for the sake of conversation, hey, Dana, April is looking for an opportunity in healthcare. And then they'll CC them on the email. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do with them? If you send me every one of your clients and say, hey, they want to get into healthcare, I wouldn't be able to do my other work. So yes, I do want to get in front of the candidates and have those conversations. I still want them to lean heavily on that relationship with their community partners to get that job readiness training, that coaching, and communicating as far as like the next steps with that community partner, if that makes sense. So that's my yes and that's my no. So I don't know if Rakia was on the same page.
Yes.
I guess, and I'm not sure if I'm answering what the question, from my perspective as a small hospital, our needs are, I look at them as simple but maybe complex, is that when you're needing a CNA or you need some CNAs, you need the pool to be able to try to recruit from. Because in this market that we're in currently, and I'm going to pick on the big people at the table, University of Chicago and the Rushes, they're recruiting similar talent that we're recruiting in order to fill some of their needs. And so we sometimes are at a large disadvantage because we can't pay the same rates. And so looking, I guess, if it could be narrowed that someone is actually looking to be in a community based hospital versus the tertiary care hospitals, some of that narrowing one would be something that would be great, because then I'm able to possibly recruit those candidates and not them, they kind of laugh at you. If you're offering, $18 and somebody else is offering 26, for that position, even though I know I can't compete with the larger institutions, from a dollars and cents standpoint. But if some of the people that are in those pools are looking for a certain designation, the smaller and the community base, that would be great.
Thanks, Leslie. I know we don't have a ton more time. We have a couple minutes left. I know a lot of you work with community organizations to recruit. And I wonder if you could think about, what would make those relationships even better? What would, make those candidates more successful, or would increase that number of candidates? Any final thoughts?
Can you say that again, April? The last part?
Just anything that would make your relationships with your community recruiting partners stronger. What would allow those candidates to be more successful, or, how could our partners help prepare them better?
That's like the Tootsie Pop commercial. And I apologize if I'm bringing too much humor into the call. It's kind of one of those things that it's not cookie cutter at all. It depends on what the skill level the position may be, the mental state of the clients that they're working with. So I know for me, I like for the community partners to have a better handle on the job preparedness or readiness. We had an event on Friday and people were showing up for interviews with no resume. And that's kind of like not even job interview one-on-one. That's almost like the remedial level of job interviews. Like, you're going to a job interview, bring your resume. Oh, well, I have it on my phone. I'm not touching your dirty phone. It's COVID.
Yeah.
So what are we doing? But just that's something for me. And that's a general statement across the board, just having some of that baseline job readiness for their clients before they come to us. I think sometimes community partners are under the gun to provide us with applicants, and that they don't necessarily have always the good quality of candidates. And so it's like we're getting more quantity than we are quality.
I'd also say realistic expectations with your employer partners of, how the candidates are touched. I know that we have some partners that, expect outreach to every single candidate. So it's just that partnership, making sure that there's realistic expectations on both sides.
Awesome point.
Thank you. Let's go hear what the strategic partners have to say. And I wonder if Rukia or Dana, would you mind presenting a little bit about what we talked about here, just very briefly?
Rukia, you want to do it?
Dana, I'm gonna let you do that. You sprinkle some humor in there.
Okay.
Welcome back, everybody. I know we don't have much time, so I know our employers are dying to hear what the strategic partners talked about. Could you give us a little brief rundown of some of the things you talked about?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, I'm Adrian. I took notes and facilitated, so I'm just going to read them back since I have them. So yeah, I had a great discussion, a lot of energy, which is lovely. So just a few different kind of themes that came up. One is when we think about individuals who may have been trained in different countries as well, how do their credentials transfer or not transfer over here in the Chicagoland and in the States as well? So thinking about how can there be an openness to hire them as well. So with awareness as well as identifying career pathways for those individuals as well. On hospital and employer partnership training efforts, just general flexibility on maybe part-time employees being allowed to participate as well, since sometimes full-time employees, just from life and busyness, can kind of create a bit of a challenge there. The idea of joint advisory boards around hiring came up often. It's helpful to get real-time feedback on what's needed in the workforce, and they often are maybe just an hour and a half, but they really do a lot of really important feedback and work. Ensuring that clinical managers have a lot of input as well when entering into these partnerships. Sometimes it can just be HR and talent, but the clinical managers are going to be the ones responsible for the hours that the students put in and can probably detail if they're going to be a good fit for the hospital system. So ensuring that they have some input as well. A more relaxed approach to certifications. So MAs are an example. Some people don't hire without the certification. So if there could be a grace period to allow a brand new graduate the time to get certified, these things cost money. So sometimes they don't have the ability to get them right away, and so it's not accessible right away for individuals. So maybe a little bit of a grace period and time to do that. A general awareness of allied health is important. And then also, and I'll finally say on kind of the issue of high school internships, some greater nuance on internship acceptance. I think a lot of times we use GPA or that, but could we use additional letters of recommendation? Sometimes undocumented youth, as an example, might have barriers that don't show up strictly on the grades and GPA. So can we think about ways to do that? And again, not that some folks aren't already thinking about this or are already doing this. These are just some of the themes that that came up in our group.
Wow, that's a lot. Thank you. And I'm going to compile some notes just on this discussion to send out with all the meeting materials so that everyone in the collaborative can see and you have these. And I'm going to bring this to our steering committee meeting on Thursday, because one of the purposes of this conversation was to help steer how we approach community recruitment as CHWC and what kinds of activities or conversations we could have around that to strengthen that initiative in 2022. So Rukia is going to share what we talked about as employers.
Dana's going to share it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rukia. Dana.
And I was just going to sit back and say, yay. No. So we talked about the importance of the communication to community partners and how we can get some good candidates. And if I miss out on anything, April, Rukia, anyone, please jump in. And we were talking about, influencers and using social media platforms to communicate with clients. Something else that was discussed was having realistic expectations of the community partners that we're working with. Having some baseline expectations, as well as kind of getting in front of those candidates to a certain extent. This is where I was making the joke of the Charlie Brown statement, just being able to communicate with them what some of our expectations are and how some of the things that we're looking for, how it can help them to kind of move up in the career ladder of healthcare just through different trainings. And am I leaving something out? See, I'm not as funny on this side of the. Did I leave anything out?
I think just to round it out, it was also expectations of having our community partners have realistic expectations about our ability to sort of meet with people, not sending clients one by one, like, hey, this person is interested in, a healthcare job, like one by one. It's very hard to be responsive in that way because you can take up all your time during the day doing that. And the other piece was, Erin, you were basically saying like having realistic expectations just about what the job is in the sense, or am I saying it right?
Yeah, just our roles. I mean, it's very difficult if you're sending over 50 people to have that expectation that our recruitment team is having a conversation with every single candidate and like sending them to the right job and making sure that they're kind of like the red carpet rolled out for them.
Yeah.
Okay, so lots of great stuff. I wish we had more time to talk through that, but as I mentioned, I'll bring it to the steering committee and hopefully come up with some ideas of how we can bridge these gaps in the coming year. We only have 2 minutes left, but did anyone have a community announcement, anything that they wanted to share?
Sure. Malcolm X Medical Assisting Program is expanding. So we're opening up 2 more sites around the city. We'll be in Chatham and we'll be in the Austin area to begin with. And then we'll have a 3rd location on the north side that we're working on.
That's great news, Christine. Okay, thank you all so much for joining and for participating in this conversation. I really appreciate it. Final reminder to fill out that brief poll. It only takes 5 minutes. I'm really hoping we can do some of this in person next year. I think it'll just be so much better. Thank you all and see you in the new year if I don't see you beforehand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one, everybody.
Cheers. Bye.